And every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This will be the day. This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning, "My country, tears of thee. Sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. And so let freedom ring. From the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire, let freedom ring. From the mighty mountains of New York, let freedom ring. From the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania, let freedom ring. From the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado, let freedom ring. From the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring, and when this happens, when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
If there is anyone out there who still doubts that America is a place where all things are possible, who still wonders if the dream of our founders is alive in our time, who still questions the power of our democracy, tonight is your answer. Change will not come if we wait for some other person, or if we wait for some other time. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change that we seek. We are the hope of the future. The answer to the cynics who tell us our house must stand divided, that we cannot come together, that we cannot remake this world as it should be. We know that what began as a whisper has now swelled to a chorus that cannot be ignored, that will not be deterred, that will ring out across this land as a hymn that will heal this nation, repair this world, make this time different than all the rest. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Let it ring indeed. Thank you all so much for coming out on this beautiful evening. It's wonderful to look out in this crowd and see those diverse voices out there. People standing together, as the Reverend Dr. King spoke about. I'd like to introduce to you The person who, she's going to talk about a bunch of us, but this was the battery, the energy, the type A+ of our group, Kristen Mirbach.
Hi, Somerville. This is really amazing to look out and see this many people here. We put this together a week and a half ago, and it's just amazing to look out and see this many people here to support Community for Unity in Somerville. I want to first address two things that have to do with housekeeping. One of them is we're trying to do a no-footprint event so that all garbage ends up in the back there. Right as you're leaving down here, we have a recycling. We're not allowed to have garbage bins, but we have clear bags, so you can put your garbage and your recycling in there. I'd also like to bring your attention to the Red Cross fundraising that we're doing for the victims of Hurricane Harvey in Texas and the Gulf Coast. The total amount that we raise in that container back there on the left-hand side, right as you're walking out, we're going to take a picture of the check that we sent to the Red Cross and post it on the Community for Unity website, Facebook site. I'd like to thank my co-organizers who were literally strangers a week and a half ago, but quickly became friends in the wake of the violence in Charlottesville. We became quick friends in our shared outrage and our shared dismay, but we also became united in our mutual love of Somerville and our commitment to celebrating Somerville's diversity and our whole community, every member of it. Donna Volp from Hate Has No Home Here, Andrea, I'm not going to get it right, Stapados. Did I get it wrong? Where is she?
You're good.
Okay. Karen Gaffney, so much easier. Jen Kitchen and Michelle Edgar. I'd also, yeah, right? I could not have managed, I can't even believe I'm here and I can't believe you're here. This was amazing and I could not have done any of this without all of them. I'd also like to thank the Somerset County Sheriff's Department and everyone at the County Facilities and Services Department, specifically Carl Memely, who I just met, and he made this permit happen for us. Really short notice. We wanted to hold this rally at this location, at the county seat in front of the courthouse, nowhere else. And they made it possible for this to happen in like 4 days. Finally, I'd like to thank our generous and diverse panel of speakers tonight. They agreed to come on very short notice, clear their schedules, and come here to speak to you about unity in our community. They are speaking with one voice, regardless of political, religious, or cultural differences. They come from all walks of life, and they will speak with many different voices tonight. But they will deliver one message. This is a community for unity, and we will not be divided. So I'm just going to say a few things about why we're here tonight. And I believe it's to remind ourselves of what we already know, but maybe some of us have forgotten. We are human and we are vulnerable, and we are all trying to protect that vulnerability all the time. Every one of us. We want safe streets and good schools. We want happiness for ourselves and for our children. And we want to live long and healthy lives. Since we all know that none of these things are guaranteed, we feel that vulnerability, some more than others. But when we are truly face to face with our humanness, our shared vulnerability, most of us become blind to all of those things that seem to divide us. These things that are not all that real, not all that substantial when you look closely. When your husband collapses from a heart attack, or your house is engulfed in flames, or Hurricane Harvey sweeps away all you own, or when you are diagnosed with breast cancer? Do you say to the doctor, to the EMT worker, to the police officers and firefighters, no, wait a second, you don't look like me, you don't sound like me, you aren't one of us? No. We don't do that, and we need to remember that. Not only in times of struggle and tragedy, all the time. We need to recognize our shared vulnerability, our humanness. It can't be only in times where that vulnerability is at its most raw. We have to do better than that. As many of you may already know, today is the 54th anniversary of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech. And my co-organizers and I chose this day with purpose. We believe in that dream, but we are insistent that it becomes a reality in our lifetime, now, today, not sometime in the future, now, today. So lastly, we just ask that you visit our Community for Unity Facebook page for a more comprehensive list of actions that you can take in your life today to help facilitate this dream and make it a reality. We're so thankful that you came out tonight. And now I would like to introduce Donna Volk from Hate Has No Home Here, who's going to say a few words, and she is also one of my awesome co-organizers.
I'm not much of a public speaker, so I'm going to be very, very brief, and hopefully my voice isn't shaking too much. There's quite a crowd out there, and I'm so thankful that you've all come out to support this effort. So tonight you're going to hear about several actions that you can take, and I'm just going to share a little bit about my project with you. The Hate Has No Home Here project promotes just and inclusive communities by encouraging neighbors to declare their homes, schools, businesses, and places of worship to be safe places where people of all colors, ethnicities, genders, gender identities, nationalities, sexual orientations, religions, or economic backgrounds are welcomed and valued. I invite all of you to join the nearly 1,500 community members who have already chosen to display a Hate Has No Home Here sign, and to declare that you stand against bigotry, racism, anti-Semitism, and white supremacy, and that you affirm that hate has no home here in Somerville or any community of conscience. In the beautiful words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., there comes a time when one must take a position that is either neither safe, nor politic, nor popular, but he must take it because his conscience tells him it is right. Thank you all. Thank you for being here. I'm going to take a moment now to just introduce our next co-organizer, Michelle Edgar.
Thank you all for being here. I'm also not really a great speaker, but I did want to take a moment to talk about something that's really important. It is the Central Jersey Community Coalition. We're an organization of people that started in January of this year to bring people together, to bring groups together. We're a social action network whose mission is to educate, advocate, inspire, and act. We've had programs at the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Somerset Hills almost every month since January, informing people about a variety of issues, whether it was immigration rights or supporting the LGBTQ community. Our next event is coming up September 18th. We are going to be discussing mental illness and the stigma that we have in our society and how we need to address that. So we would love to see more people involved. Certainly go Google the Central Jersey Community Coalition and you'll find our website, or go on Facebook and like our page and get information about our upcoming events. We'll have another event coming up in October talking about voting and the importance of our involvement in voting and awareness about the issues that we face specifically in Somerset County. So thank you all so much. Now I would like to introduce Rabbi Ron Isaacs. He will be saying a prayer. We will not yield, a prayer after Charlottesville. This poem can be found in your program. Thank you.
So my wife said, don't say anything before you read this, but I want all of you to know that there is life beyond retirement, and there is an Act 2. I am honored to be here in Somerville, where across the street used to be the movie theater we used to go to for 66 cents for 2 movies, the Cork Theater. Now there's just the dessert plate, which is an amazing place. And just a couple of days ago, to keep me honest and true and be able to speak, I was in Cape May on the 5th annual service called Shabbat on the Beach, where an equal number of people down there were singing and looking at the dolphins. And so with that, we will not yield, a prayer after Charlottesville. Today, I am neither Democrat nor Republican, neither left nor right nor center. I am an American, born to a legacy of truth and justice, born to a legacy of freedom and equality. Today, I am a patriot who will not yield this nation to hate, not to neo-Nazis, not to thugs self-styled as militia, not to slogans or chants, not to gestures or flags, not to threats, and not to violence. Hate is hate, ugly and brutal, and we will not yield. Today, I am Christian, Muslim, and Jew, Catholic, Buddhist, Hindu, and Sikh, atheist, and agnostic. I am Asian, Latino, Hispanic, African American, white, Native American, and multiracial. I am an immigrant, a child of the American Revolution, a veteran and a soldier. I work in the dark depth of the mines, in the high towers of Wall Street, in the factories and in the farms, in our hospitals and strip malls. I am gay, lesbian, straight, bi, trans, man, woman, and gender neutral. I am young, old, blind and deaf, hearing and sighted, disabled, powerful and unafraid. Truth is truth, that all are created equal, and we will not yield. Today I am an American, a citizen of the United States, a child of this great democracy, a child of this wise republic, dedicated to liberty, dedicated to action. We will not yield.
Thank you, Rabbi. I'm just going to take a moment before I introduce our first speaker to say that 2 weeks ago, I didn't know half the women I organized this with, that this came out together in part because 3 women decided to stand on the street corner with a sign. And if you've ever believed that one person can't make a difference, look around at the crowd here tonight and realize that it came around in part because 3 women decided to stand on the street corner with a sign, "We can make a difference." Let us also not forget that we were inspired to make a difference by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, and that we are all here tonight standing against hate, and when you stand against hate, there is only one side. I'm honored to introduce our first speaker tonight, Father Ron Pollock, the minister of St. John's Episcopal Church in Somerville.
Not a speech, but a prayer. And who could say no to the wonderful organizers? Again, let's thank them. Almighty and gracious God, our Heavenly Father, teacher of justice, peace, and love, thank you for your presence among us at the Community of Unity rally and on the occasion of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. When time stands still, when all that's gone before and all that lies ahead is caught up in the mystery of this moment, not only in our call to action today, but in the realization that we are compelled to act for justice, peace every day in our lives, and especially in our beloved community of Somerville and Somerset County, in our homes and in our hearts, as we gather together as one people, one nation, under one God. We know we are blessed when we walk together as one people. Thank you for reminding us how much we need one another and depend upon you, O God, in our daily lives, in our efforts to dismantle racism, the lie that some members of the family are inferior and others superior. O God, you made us in your own image. Look with compassion on the whole human family. Take away the arrogance and hatred which infect our hearts. Break down the walls that separate us. Unite us in bonds of love and work through our struggle and confusion to accomplish your purposes on earth, that in your good time all nations and races may serve you in unity. Rest in blessing upon us all and help us to know that there are words of truth and healing that will never be spoken unless we speak them, and deeds of courage, love, and compassion that will never be done unless we do them. Help us to see one another as God's own children, vulnerable and mortal, yet infinitely valuable apart from any social measures of worth. Help us to stand tall with those who have fallen. Enable us to give hope to those who have lost their hope. Help us to shed only your light upon all those who have lost their faith because of the sin of hatred, the ugliness of oppression, the torture and torment inflicted upon the many and the least of your servants, your own children, our brothers and sisters. Help us to realize that the awful thing about a child or a community or a nation who has suffered from any form of hate is not so much a pain and anguish it causes, great as they may be, as they indeed are. The most blasphemous thing is when a child of God doubts that they are a child of God. Help us, dear Lord, to stand up to what is subversive of hatred and evil. Help us to say that we have a God who forever chooses to be on the side of the ridiculed, the ugly, and the despised ones. Grant us that simple knowledge of our brothers and sisters are oppressed. If they hunger, we hunger. If their freedom is taken away, our freedom is not secure. Grant us common faith, that we may know peace, that all shall know justice, freedom and security, and equal opportunity and an equal chance to do their best. And in that faith, let us march towards the loving world our hands have made. And now, as we leave this place touched and changed by this occasion, marching onward to take action The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance on you and give you his peace today, tomorrow, and forever. Amen.
Our next speaker this evening is Art Adair. He's the only speaker on my list who I don't have a title for, so I'll just introduce him by saying that when he arrived earlier this evening, almost everybody already in the crowd greeted him by name.
Good evening. About 3 hours ago, I received a phone call from Father Ron, said, I need you to speak tonight. And then I got busy at work, so I'm not prepared. About 44 years ago, I got involved in my community because I didn't want my two daughters, who were 5 and 6 months at the time, to be subjected to the same things that I was subjected to in this town. But right now, I have a feeling of deja vu all over again, because 41 years ago, I stood on these right here at a rally like this because a friend of mine had gotten beaten up by police from another community. At that time, we said we need to do something. We talked with the chief of police, we talked with the mayor, and I established a human relations committee. And our slogan was unity in the community. So I don't think we had it copyrighted. Not only am I having a feeling of deja vu all over again because of the situation that happened with a friend of mine, but when I was watching the news on Charlottesville a couple weeks ago, and I saw the police with the hoses spraying people, I thought of Selma, Alabama in the 60s. I thought of Sheriff Bull Connor, and I said, it's happening again. My grandchildren are 12th generation Somerville. We trace our family history to the first birth in 1796. And my family's been here since every president. We have, and I have personally, suffered racism in every facet of my life, be it on my job, where I was the first African-American salaried person, be it in trying to buy a home, where I literally heard the salesperson tell a family, oh, this house is $160,000, and when we went to look at it, oh, the price is $200,000. Or purchasing a car and offering them something, and they said, oh no, we need more, but the next day you see it in the newspaper for a lot less. Racism itself will one day be lumped together with PTSD because racism hurts. I often thought about when I was a child, why was I treated this way? Why was I denied access into this restaurant, this hotel? Or why wasn't I selected for the All-Star team in the Little League when I led the Little League in home runs and batting average? Because one particular coach didn't like us and didn't have any African Americans on his team. I've seen a lot of transition in this community. Very good transition. It's a model. But the last couple of weeks, the last couple of years, I see the pain, the suffering of a Mrs. Martin who had to bury her son Trayvon because he was black, or Eric Garner getting beaten up or killed because he was selling Lucy's, which is part of an underground economy for as long as I can remember. I see Colin Kaepernick being boycotted because he's standing just like Martin Luther King did. He's standing just like Rosa Parks did, just like Jackie Robinson did. And I don't want my grandchildren to have to endure that. I watched a couple years ago Mayor de Blasio being beaten up by the New York City police because he had that conversation with his biracial son on how to comport himself when approached by police. My son is 40 years old. We still have that talk. And I tell my grandsons the same thing. Racism hurts. not just physically, but mentally. And as I got older, I asked why these people treated me this way. And it finally dawned on me, it wasn't me, it was them. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Tulsi Maharajan from the Somerset County Cultural Diversity Coalition.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to invite all the coalition members. I guess this is a part of the story, I guess. 30 years ago, when I came to Somerset County, I used to have to travel 2 hours to go to the Buddhist temple. Now it has become a microcosm of 21st century. When you look around, you know, we have from a Buddhist temple to Baha'i community, large Baha'i community, from a Jain temple to the Sikh community, the Hindu community. And at the same time, we're having a problem. Just recently, our colleague, Dr. Ali Chaudhry, he fought for almost 10 years to get his mosque approved in Bedminster. And Basking Ridge. And Bridgewater had the same problem. As I said, we have changed, but at the same time, there is not enough change happening. You know, as I said, the landscape has changed. 30 years ago, you know, if I wanted to get Indian food, I had to go to all the way to Edison. Now across the street, there's an Indian restaurant, right? But first of all, I want to greet all of you. Namaste. Namaste means I bow to your inner spirit. The spirited people like who believe in the believing there is a good in the world. All of you, you believe that there is a good in the world. And if we all work together, we can make a difference. As I said, for past 25 years, we have been doing many activities with the Somerset County Diversity Coalition with the help of these community leaders. You know, we have an annual Interfaith Thanksgiving dinner. Hopefully all of you will be able to participate in that. We are doing a peace day and all different activities. Sometimes I guess, you know, maybe it's a blessing. It has given us the opportunity to all come together for the one purpose, to make our community peaceful. I want to thank the organizers for putting together this program. It was, as I said, the last minute, and we were able to help the organizers with our nonprofit status. So I hope, I mean, the information is in this. If you like to do any kind of program in your community, in your temple, in your synagogue, we will be happy to bring the interfaith community to understand our neighbors. These are our neighbors, friends. So if you like to have any kinds of program in your community, we'll be happy to come and talk about the Buddhism to Baha'i, from Jain to Sikhism, all different faith groups. I know that sometimes, you know, in the community, when the Muslims, Christians, and the Jewish get together, that's the interfaith for them. No, it has changed. As I said, we have to change our perspective. So that's the part of the reason the coalition is working to promote understanding of our small global village. You know, things happening here. People know around the world that, you know, people in the Somerset County is putting together. So let's work together and make our community a true global village. Thank you again for coming, and we love you.
Thank you. Before I introduce our next speaker, I'm just going to say I'm a politician's kid, so I can get away with this joke. My father served nearly 2 decades in the New Jersey State Legislature. And as I introduce our first elected official of the evening, I just want to remind our speakers to try and keep it to about 3 minutes. It is my honor to introduce the mayor of Somerville, Brian Gallagher.
So I was told by a number of people as I walked up, Gallagher, you got 3 minutes. I said, home rule, I get 5. And in case you're looking for the title of Art Adair, it's Mr. Somerville. Somerville and Somerset County are a very special place. You look around you today, and you have all of the moral and ethical consciences represented. Children, parents, grandparents, religious, political, and social leaders. We are all here to show a recognition that we are trying to make a better society. Nobody forced us to be here today. Nobody made us come. We all made a conscious decision to try and better ourselves and those around us. As parents, we are the filters in our children's growth. Our children are the greatest beneficiaries of our strengths, convictions, and beliefs. And unfortunately, they reflect our weaknesses also. They are born with a clean slate, and our jobs as parents in the home, in school, in our churches, and in our communities is to instill in them all that is good. A united community is built over time by many. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "The good neighbor looks beyond the external accidents and discerns those inner qualities that make all men human and therefore brothers." So typically on the weekends, my wife is making breakfast or dinner for our family of 7. And of course, we usually have an extra person or 2 who slept over. It's a pretty common occurrence in our house. And at the table, the banter at times is absolutely overwhelming, but it's welcome. And it's very interesting to listen how kids, and now young adults, can express themselves and work out their differences. It's very similar to how a community should work together to solve issues and embrace differences. Maybe we can all take some lessons from all of our children on how to work together. There are times they all get along famously. At times, they're all bickering. At times, there are some who are quiet and some very loud. There are those who refuse to budge in an argument. My wife says they get that from me. And at times, some become very quiet and need coaxing to get them to speak up. There are tears and laughter, yelling and compromise, seriousness and humor. There are times Mom steps in to mediate, and at times I step into the fray to tell them to cool it. But at the end of a meal, they all get up. Sometimes they do put their dishes in the sink, and they proceed to move on with life afterwards. It seems the table is the discussion point for all of their issues, both small and large. But once they leave the table, the issues may have been worked out or set aside to be finished on another day. Yet throughout, they all have a part in the conversations. They all have an opportunity to express their convictions, and they all have an equal stake. While the kitchen table is no substitute for a community, it is kind of a nice way to see how issues can and should be dealt with. They all know they are part of a family community, and that their expressions, fears, stories, challenges, and goals are listened to, examined, critiqued, and valued. As a family community, we accept that we are different people, but we embrace those differences, as that is what makes us interesting and whole. The challenge we have as a community is to do the same. to realize that we are all in the same community and that we have individual challenges and different goals for ourselves, but that as a whole community, our goals are quite the same, or they should be. Safety, security, and a good future for our children, reliance on family to keep us all grounded in what is right and wrong, faith to guide us when the going gets tough, and a community to focus all of these elements into that common goal we can share beyond color, religion, money, or status. And I do dare say Somerville and Somerset County does represent those communities. Share the common points first. Then we can challenge ourselves to recognize, embrace, and value our differences. The world and the media today focuses on differences. Differences in our culture, in language, in color. The differences of the haves and the have-nots. The differences of what side of the tracks one lives on. The differences in the amount of money or cars or houses one has. Some of these differences are what makes us an interesting society. But these differences do not and should not define us as a society. Life and culture and community are not about our differences. It's about what we all hold in common as people. The love of our children, the pride in our families, the respect for our neighbor, and the involvement in our communities. It is these common elements of society that unite us. And when we speak of a community, we must encompass all facets, not just those parts we are most familiar with or most comfortable with. Don't always point the finger at the person and say, you should be doing. Turn the finger around and ask, what am I doing? Look at yourself and those around you. When you have a holiday party, who's in your home? When your kids have a birthday party, who comes to the door? When there is a community fundraiser in your town, do you go? Do you constantly critique and focus on negatives, or do you celebrate the positive aspects of your community? Our charge as spiritual leaders, elected officials, congregants, neighbors, parents, and children is clear. Share our common goals, recognize the individual, and embrace differences in order to define and build a better community. Thank you. God bless Somerville, God bless Somerset County, and God bless the United States of America.
Thank you, Mayor Gallagher. Our next speaker is Mark Williams, who is the chair of the Mental Health Stigma Free campaign.
Best wishes to Texas, and that everything turns out well. Good evening, brothers and sisters. My name is Mark Williams, and I am so appreciative to be standing before you here tonight and to share some of my thoughts about the recent events within our beloved community we call the United States of America. I am joyful that I have been asked to share with you, and not at all surprised that we have arrived at this moment. A moment that has seen a vicious backlash to the progress made in the area of human rights not experienced since the 1960s. The ultra-conservative narrative seeks to deconstruct the social justice progress made during the past few years. We must speak truth to power in the public square. Because in the words of Dr. Reverend William Barber, silence is not an option. Did you actually think that they were going to sit back and do nothing? Did you actually believe that they were going to do nothing but fabricate a lie to try to take it all back? Of course there is a backlash and a fear of hate whenever there is a challenge to the narrative of injustice and oppression. Every walk towards equality has been met with a backlash. This is the call and response of American history. No Obama, no Trump. I am reminded of the community being swept along by the rip currents of injustice and oppression, the weight of racism and bigotry, homophobia, xenophobia, dragging us down, dipping beneath the waves. We struggle to rise up just enough above the water, and through our collective mouths we take a gulp of air, just enough until the next wave, just enough to allow us to stay afloat and continue to tread water. We are treading water in the ocean of intolerance and hate. We are treading water until the next Charlottesville. Silence is not an option. My humanity means nothing if I don't care for my brother. My humanity means nothing if I don't care for my sister. My humanity means nothing if I don't care for the children. When they shoot up our churches and paint swastikas on our doors of our synagogues, when they set fire to our mosques, silence is not an option. When men start legislating what women can do or can't do with their bodies, silence is not an option. When they question our ability to serve our country because of our gender identity, silence is not an option. When they pass laws to suppress our vote, silence is not an option. When they tread on and dig up the sacred lands of indigenous people, silence is not an option. Have you heard? Somebody's been messing with my brother, and it's gone on far too long. Someone's been hurting my brother, and it's gone on far too long. I said someone's been hurting my brother, and it's gone on far too long. And I won't be silent anymore. Let us choose to be the person we know we are called to be. The person whose love reaches out. The person who, like sunshine, goes everywhere. Its temple, all space. Its shrine, the good heart. Its creed, all truth. Its ritual, the work of love. For the small creatures, such as we, the vastness of intolerance is only tolerable through love. Thank you very much.
Let the congregation say amen. I apologize for our next speaker. That's a hard act to follow. But I'd like to introduce Steve Peter, the Somerville Borough Council President.
I shall do my best. On this day in 1963, 5 years before I was born, on a different set of steps, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. shared with us his dream for a more just and equal America. When I was young, we seemed to be moving, albeit slowly, in that direction. Recent events, especially those in Charlottesville, Virginia, show that we are moving backwards and far more rapidly than we could have ever imagined. In response to these events, I've heard many people say, "That's not us, that's not our town, that's not America," but it is. It may not be the America we want, but it's reality. The hate groups that used to live in the shadows are now unmasked, marching in full view, and it is up to us to show them and the world that the hope of the vision of America at the heart of Dr. King's dream can and must be realized.
Yes.
As he so eloquently put it, with this faith, we will be able to transform the jaggling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. I'm German American, and the history of my ancestral homeland in the past century shows that hate can spread just like a cancer. The lump starts small, without pain, and we get used to it being there. And it grows little by little, and we don't quite notice that it may be too late until it is. Our theme here tonight is unity, from the Latin word for one, which we also see in the motto of the United States, e pluribus unum, out of many, one. The plurality that we have of cultures, of races, of creeds, of orientations, is what makes our nation uniquely strong. The unity is a common purpose, not a racial or philosophical purity. Our differences, while perhaps daunting at times, are ultimately what makes America, America. We say tonight, hate has no home here. But our morally bankrupt leader in Washington says, it's okay if hate lives in the back house. We must state unequivocally that racism, sexism, homophobia, and bigotry of any shape and form will not be tolerated.
Right.
If we don't have leadership at the top, we'll lead from below, starting here in Somerville and in Somerset County. Unless, in case it's not clear to anybody, racism, sexism, homophobia, and bigotry of any shape and form will not be tolerated. It ends here. It ends tonight. We must be unified in that message. Only when we carry that message forward will America be great. Thank you.
You were up to the challenge. Our next speaker this evening is the Reverend Paul Jansen, who is the pastor of the United Reformed Church, just a short walk from here.
Good enough. There we go. Wonderful crowd, many people, good people of faith, and many good people who don't claim any particular kind of faith. Let me speak to those of you first. I speak as a representative of a faith community, as a Christian tonight. Let me speak first to those of you who are not followers of Jesus. It's possible you may associate the voices of hatred and violence with Christianity. I can understand your confusion, even your anger. Individual Christians have long distorted the message and the faith of Jesus, but it goes beyond that. The church and its leaders, over the years, have taught Christians to conduct forced conversions, to dehumanize, and even to kill other human beings for many reasons. One of my historical colleagues, just down the road here in New Brunswick, in the 1850s, wrote a pamphlet entitled Slaveholding Not Sinful. That's part of our history. So if you associate Christianity with segregation on Sunday, or housing, or job discrimination, or inequity of opportunity and mass incarceration, you are not wrong. So let's talk. Christians like me want to talk about unity and forgiveness and justice and love. And we must speak of such values, for they are core to us who follow Jesus. But to my fellow Christians, I speak to you a challenge for confession, for atonement, for renouncing yourselves, taking up your crosses, and following the one whom you name as your Lord. Christians like me want to speak, as Jesus spoke, of the fullness of life that God means to give to every human being. But I can't invite you to say yes to humanity with God without asking my fellow Christians, at least, to claim the voice of God that says no. No to every bigoted thought. No to every vile image and stereotype. No to every shameful word. No to any twisted belief that dehumanizes another human being. To use a word that has theological baggage, but such as it is, racism is sin. Bigotry is sin. Prejudice is sin. And systems that build on these sins, such systems are powers and principalities of this world. They are the very temptations that we ask not to be led into when we pray the Lord's Prayer. And if we profit from such powers, from such systems, let me ask you, what good does it do to gain the whole world and to lose your own soul? Others have and will speak of visions of peace and unity and our common humanity. We affirm all those things in Jesus' name, Christians do, but I urge those of you who do claim Jesus to confess our own sin, to own up to our own complicity with the powers of evil, to atone for the wrongs that we've done, either that we've done in Jesus' name or wrongs that we've just done and then went to church on Sunday and expected Jesus to forgive us for them. I ask us to make right what we've made wrong, not to conform to this world, but to be transformed by the renewal of our minds. Finally, I commend to you the work that some of the other speakers, folks who have spoken or will speak, that they've done, the pledge that Mr. Chowdhury will invite us to take, and take this brochure with you tonight. It's got all kinds of helpful things to do. Be doers of the word and not hearers only. To all people who are of faith, I commend you to attend the weekly rally for the core values that we're standing up for tonight. In a temple, in a mosque, in a church, in wherever you might gather, or in a bar if that's where you gather. Whatever works for you. And I just close with this. You want the world to be better? You want it to be different? Get together with others who want the same thing. And be the change you want to see in the world. Thank you.
It's my honor to introduce our next speaker, Heba Maqsood, a board member of the Islamic Society of Central Jersey and a board member of the Sisterhood of Salam Shalom.
Hello, everybody. Okay, sorry. Short notice, so I'm going to read from my notes here. Okay, so still short, right? Thank you, Andrew. A couple of years ago, I walked into a major supermarket. I won't name the name, no free advertising. And I was picking up some detergent, and I noticed some guys started cursing and using the word Quran and Muslim in the same sentence. It took me by surprise. I had only had my hair covered for a few years at the time, and I pretty much lived my life as an Italian-looking white girl. I realized that he basically, accosted me simply because I had a scarf on my head, because I was wearing a Led Zeppelin t-shirt at the time and ripped jeans. So I did what everybody else did at that time. I went home and I wrote about it on Facebook. And I mentioned that on purpose, because today, as a director of social media, I see a lot of people writing on social media, but they don't do anything about it. Well, I was lucky enough that my really good Jewish friend called me the next day, and she was like, Heba, you've got to speak up. She said, don't you know when they come after the Muslims, they come after the Jews? Yeah. And I said, okay, what should I do? She said, let's call the media and let's tell our story. And sure enough, I was lucky enough that the New York Times actually covered my story. You can Google my name and you'll see it right away, because I'm the only person in the entire world that spells my name with M-A-C-K. So, it dawned on me what was the most important thing I wanted to say to all of you, right? There's a million things I could say. Well, I wanted to leave you with some statistics because it's really important that everybody, understand where the Muslim community is right now. There's 1.7 billion Muslims in the world. There's only 1% in America, that are Muslim, so it's roughly around 3 million adults. But the reality is we're actually an extremely diverse community, despite what the media tells you. There are more than 50 Muslim majority countries in the United States. The largest is actually an Asian, and the second is actually Indian. There are more Muslims in China than Saudi Arabia. This is a fact. In the United States, we have an even more diverse story. We have actually no majority race. 25% of the 3.3 million Muslims are black, 25% are white, 18% are Asian, that's Pakistani and South Asian, only 18% are Arab, and the other 14 remaining percent are actually mixed, either white converts or Hispanic. And we're roughly 50-50 native born and new immigrants. So why does this matter? Well, because if you look at the crux of Islam, and I won't get into a religious lecture, the reality is that if you just open up one of the revered chapters of the Quran, where God actually tells us how to live our life, he said, and this is chapter 49, verse 13, "We have created you male and female, and we have made you nations and tribes, that ye may know one another. The most noble of you in the sight of God is the most righteous of you." The other thing most people don't know about Muslims is we don't just go by the Quran. We go by sayings of our prophets, and depending on how verified it is through history, that's how strong it is. But one of the ones that is very strong that we often miss is that we're actually encouraged to be extremely good to our neighbors. As a matter of fact, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said that when he had heard from God through the Archangel Gabriel, he thought that his neighbor was going to inherit in our wills. That's how much God talked about how we have to treat our neighbors, despite faith. So, in the interest of leaving this under 3 minutes, I'm going to give you an action item. I worked in the media for almost 20 years. And what I learned about my colleagues in 12 years of television, 4 years in magazine, 2 years at a newspaper, and 5 in digital media is that the people reporting the news to you today are just average Joes. They're average Joes with their own biases, their own opinions, and their job is to write the story of man bites dog. It's not their job to write the good story to make you feel good. It's their job to make you read or watch. So what I want you to do is to actually, that phrase, if you see something, say something. That's all over New York City. I'm from New York originally. So I want you to do that. I want you to call out the media. Not that it's fake news, because it's not. But I want you to call it out. I don't want you to write it on Facebook and Twitter. When you hear something divisive, I want you to call up the radio station, 101.9 or 5, what is it? Okay? If you see something on CNN or MSNBC or Fox News or anything, call it out. Say something. If you see something online, a news article, do not comment. Because nobody reads the comments except for the people who comment. If you want to make a difference in the media, call the editor, write to the editor, say something to that media group. That's what you have to do. You have to speak up. That's how the media responds. And that's what I'm going to leave you with. The final thing I wanted to add is that one of the most prolific Muslim scholars in the United States today, he's also, a teacher of mine. His name is Sheikh Hamza Yusuf. He said something to Muslims, when we're always down and out. Believe me, whenever something has happened, we're more afraid than you guys are. He said, "You are here to change the world. Don't let the world change you." That's
That's it. We are here to change the world. Thank you. Our next speaker this evening is a local guy. I believe the office is around that corner. Senator Kip Bateman.
Thank you, Jen. Actually, around this corner. Good evening to everyone. And let me first thank the organizer, Kristen and Jen, and everybody who had something to do with this, because I know that you put this together in a very short notice. And let me thank all the speakers who came out tonight, because this really is all about community. You look at us, you see how diverse we are. That's what it's all about. And I'm here tonight because I believe that every leader, from Borough Hall to the White House, has a responsibility to speak out in the face of injustice. There's no excuse for staying silent. What happened in Charlottesville is not representative of the America that I know. Hate has no home in our country. And looking out at the crowd today, I know that it will never have a place in Somerville either. After the attacks on Jewish community centers last year, I stood shoulder to shoulder, Republican, Democrat, Assemblyman Swicker, and my colleagues on both sides of the aisle. And we made a pledge, which Ali will read later on tonight, to challenge bigotry and racism in every form. And that's a promise I intend to keep. New Jersey is one of the most diverse states in the nation. That diversity makes us stronger, and we need to do everything we can to welcome people who are different to our community. If there's one message I can leave with you today, it is a call for unity, for all of us to come together, just as we have today, regardless of our political beliefs, and stand united against all those who seek to divide us. That is the only way to heal our country. We cannot teach tolerance to our children without first practicing it ourselves. Have an open and honest conversation with someone who feels differently than you do. Find out why that is. Remember, we're all Americans first. I think you'll find that we have more in common than we think we do. And above all, don't lose hope. Your presence here today is proof that Dr. King's dream is still within reach. And I just want to say a couple things. I had the opportunity back in April 25th, to be part of a community vigil at Temple Bethel in Hillsborough. And we had many faiths come together, Republicans and Democrats. Assemblyman Swicker was there. And it was an incredible evening. And basically what transpired from that is, we realized that we're more common than we think. And we have kind of formed a group in our next event, and I encourage all of you to come out, is on October 29th at the North Branch Reformed Church in Bridgewater. We're having, it's basically many faiths, one home. It's about the environment, about our earth. So if you're free that Sunday afternoon, I invite you all to come out. I think it's going to be an incredible event, and we welcome everybody and everybody's input. Now, I have the pleasure of introducing our next speaker, who is very familiar, who's no stranger to Somerset County or Hunterdon County. Congressman Leonard Lance was elected to the Congress in 2008 after a long and distinguished career in the New Jersey State Legislature. In fact, he was the one, it was a Lance v. McGreevey amendment, which won't allow the legislature to borrow anymore without going to the public for input, which is very important. But more importantly, after last year's election and after the attacks on the Jewish community centers, a group of interfaith members around the county came to me and said, will you arrange a meeting with Congressman Lance? And I said, absolutely. So I reached out to Congressman Lance, and I think 18 or 20 of us, and some of them are right here tonight, we went and we met with Congressman Lance to talk about our views, about our concerns about America, about the bigotry, about the racism, about certain statements that were being made. And not only was he responsive, but since that time, he's had, as you probably are aware, maybe you attended it, He's had 5 public hearings, which I think says a lot about Congressman Lance. He wants to hear from his people. So it's my pleasure to introduce Congressman Leonard Lance. Leonard, thank you for coming.
Thank you, Kip, and good evening to you all, Reverend clergy, to the distinguished leaders at the state, the county, and the municipal level, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, there is no family more distinguished in the history of this county than the Bateman family. Kip's grandfather, Palmer Bateman, who owned the paper in this county. His father, Raymond H. Bateman, who was the president of the state senate, and now Kip. Thank you, Kip, for all that you do for Somerset County and New Jersey. I am old enough to remember the 1963 March on Washington. August 28, 1963, 54 years ago today. It was organized by those known as the Big Six: Martin Luther King Jr., James Farmer, A. Philip Randolph, Roy Wilkins, Whitney Young, and John Lewis. And there was a 7th, not well recognized then, but certainly I recognize that 7th person tonight. Dorothy Haight, for many years the president of the National Council of Negro Women. And she should have been recognized then as I recognize her tonight. They're all gone, except for John Lewis, my colleague in the House of Representatives. I was honored to be with Mr. Lewis in Birmingham and Montgomery and Selma in March of 2015 at the 50th anniversary of the 1965 Selma to Montgomery Voting Rights March. As those famous marches led to the enactment of bipartisan legislation, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, largely due to the march in 1963, and the Voting Rights Act of 1965, largely due to what John Lewis and his colleagues did on the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma in March of 1965. I hope that events like today's can lead this year to the renewal of the Voting Rights Act by the Congress of the United States. We are here today to oppose bigotry in its many vicious forms. We are here today as Republicans, Democrats and Independents, Protestants and Catholics, Gentiles and Jews, Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists, men, women, and children. We oppose and condemn white supremacists, anti-Semites, the KKK, and neo-Nazis. We condemn them all. As Martin Luther King famously said, we judge all people, not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. That is true of whites, of blacks, of Hispanics, of Asians, of all of us in this country, and indeed all of us across the globe. Finally, here in Somerville, the county seat of Somerset County, and it is my honor to represent Somerville and most of Somerset County in the Congress. Finally, we are reminded today of the words of the greatest unifier in American history, our 16th president, Abraham Lincoln, who said in his second inaugural address a month and a half before his assassination, "With malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds, to care for him who shall have borne the battle, and for his widow and his orphan, to do all which may achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace among ourselves and among all nations. Lincoln's words are as applicable today as they were in 1865. Let us together bind up the nation's wounds, and let us make a lasting peace among ourselves and with all nations. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It is my honor to introduce our next speaker, a member of the General Assembly from Legislative District 16, representing portions of Hunterdon County, Somerset County, Mercer County, and Middlesex County, Assemblyman Andrew Zwicker.
Hello, Somerville. Hold those signs up. This is a rally. You want to change the world, you can't do it quietly. You want to end white supremacy, we're going to do it loudly. Can you imagine peace? Are you going to make America kind again? Resist hate, be the light. Imagine all the people living in peace, because hate has no home here in Somerville or in Somerset County or anywhere in New Jersey or in the United States of America. Up here, we get to look out and see this beautiful, beautiful sea of humanity. But take a moment and look around, because New Jersey is one of the most diverse states in the country. We are one of the strongest states in the country, not because we are the same, but because we are different, and we embrace those differences, whether we are Democrat or Republican, white, brown, black, male, female, gay, straight, it doesn't matter. New Jersey is strong because of those differences, and if we are going to believe that there is good in the world, it starts with each and every one of us, and it starts right now. And if you want to be the good, and we are here because we believe in love, we are here because we believe in good, then you must know, number one, that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal no matter what. And if you want to make America love again, if you believe the world can be different, then be a part of the change. Be the good. Make sure you participate, just like the speakers have said, in your communities, in your towns, in your houses of worship, in your bars. It doesn't matter. Speak up, stand up, and come this November, you must do one thing, and that is you must vote. Because if you don't vote, you don't have the right to complain. If you don't vote, you don't have the right to be the good. Because when you vote, you will be the change that you demand. It starts with you. And if you want to vote and make the change, it starts now and it starts next year and the year after. That is how we make the change. It starts tonight and every day. Thank you so very much for coming out here. Let's be the good and be the change.
I want some of those t-shirts that Assemblyman Zwicker was mentioning. It gives me great joy to introduce our next speaker, in part because I know her personally. She's got too many titles, and we're running short on time. But she is, among other things, a member of the Meta Theater Company. We're going to hear from a couple of them tonight. Karina Gonzalez.
I'm a shorty, yeah. Okay. Hello, Somerville and friends. My name is Karina Gonzalez, and I am part of your community. We don't always have control over the communities we join. Genetics, where we are born, and the assumptions of others force us into these communities. but I have lived in Branchburg for the past 10 years, and I don't plan on leaving anytime soon. I chose to be a part of your community, and I'm raising my children in your community. I'm also part of other communities, such as the geek community, the Jersey Girl community, I have still never pumped gas, and the Hispanic community. I am Latina, Puerto Rican. Dime huepa. Being Latina shouldn't prevent me from what I want to do with my life, but it can, and it does. I have been assumed to be less intelligent than I am, have been assumed to be the nanny to my own children, and have been assumed to be an employee instead of a customer at a high-end clothing store. I have been condescended to, written off, and underestimated, just because I'm brown and my last name is Gonzalez. I wish I had a magical answer for you on how to fix racism. But as Dr. King said 54 years ago today in his I Have a Dream speech, I refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity of this nation.
Yes. Yes.
I was never an activist about anything. Okay, maybe Star Trek. But I was always woefully ignorant about politics. I never voted or understood what the big deal was, but then this presidential election began and I started paying attention. And Dr. Karen Gaffney, a fellow professor at RVCC, who you will hear from later, asked if I would like to get involved. That's how I started. Someone invited me and I went. And I started learning. I began conducting myself on what Dr. King calls the high plane of dignity and discipline. I started learning about what's going on in our own backyard. Being both female and a person of color, I didn't think I needed to learn this stuff. But just because you have felt racism and discrimination doesn't mean you understand how to dismantle it. So I got involved. I helped found the Central Jersey Community Coalition, a social action network. I joined the Meta Theater Company, which creates original theater addressing social justice issues, and helped launch the Immigrant Defense Network at RVCC. Not bad for someone who'd never voted before. I have come here, as Dr. King said, to remind you of the fierce urgency of now. That this is no time to engage in the luxury of cooling off or to take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. Now is the time to make real the promises of democracy. Now is the time to rise from the dark. I was asked to give a suggestion of how to bring unity to our community, and here it is. Take what little time you have and spend it doing something productive for your communities. They don't need your money as much as they need your presence, understanding, and voice. Get educated, ask questions, don't assume, and get involved.
I'm a little taller. Our next speaker is Joe Forte, the Secretary of the New Jersey LGBT Democratic Caucus.
Yeah, Joe!
It's great to be here. I'm glad I'm from Somerset County. So, I'm here because I'm currently working on a project called Here For You. And I'm going to talk about that and my mission to talk to 1 million people. So at an early age, my sister was disabled, and I've always been passionate about helping people. And right around high school, I had started coming out as LGBT. And when I was talking to my friends, they would always compliment me and say, Joe, thank you for being so strong and for being there for me. And they would share similar stories with me. And as time went on, in my free time, I started to share my story with other people and come with the goal to talk to 1 million people about being LGBT. Because, as I realized, I'm your brother, I'm your friend, I'm your coworker, I'm your son, we're all the same. We're more the same than not. And I wanted to share that. With tonight's theme, I asked you to come out, but in a different way. I asked you to come out in support of other races, other religions, other groups of people, because again, we're all the same. With my projects, Here for You, as I mentioned, I want to talk to 1 million people. So far, I've talked to about 2,000 folks. I've gone to high schools and colleges and events like this. And I just want to say, you know, as we're here together, I'm here for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. We're here for you too. Our next speaker is Adina Brown, who is a woman that is so impressive that the only title I have for her is community member.
We can add a couple of more things to that, but I'll leave it there. Good evening, everyone. So, I have some cards here, so I'll refer to them. It's so lovely to see such a nice, happy, glowing crowd. Makes me more nervous, but still very happy to be here and to see so many people finding this issue just as important as I do. As some have already stated, it's really difficult to believe that just 54 years ago, Dr. Martin Luther King had a lot of visions and hopes that we thought would definitely have been realized by now, but unfortunately, it looks like those hopes are kind of dashed. Some of us were actually thinking that we were kind of coming to the end of this era of bigotry and hatred just being the norm for our society. But unfortunately, it seems that those bigots and those who are very hateful have pretty much become liberated. They've been reactivated, they're out, they're happy, they're free. But I think it's only for a moment. Call me a dreamer, but I firmly believe that, in the words of Dr. Martin Luther King, that on that unseasonably cool August day, it was a mild day that day when we look at the weather report, I believe that his words still have a lot of relevance today. As a matter of fact, I believe that they are just on the cusp of actually and truly being realized. I say that because I know for a fact with my own self and with the changes I see in the world that when we believe in something wholeheartedly and we have a dream, all we really need to do next is put some action behind it. And we have to clearly know, state, and get behind that objective. That being said, I implore everyone here, do as much as you can. Not just resist. Let's move beyond just resisting. Just as certain trends in our society become unpopular and obsolete, let's make it very uncomfortable for people to be filled with hate and to promote such words. If it's money and influence that matter most to those in power, let's make any hateful action very unpopular and very unprofitable. So, I just have an action for you. If you're out and you hear something vile being said, or worse, you see it being done, make a complaint to the manager where you are, or whoever's in authority at that place, and vow to remove your business permanently if nothing's done. Further, and I know we talked about social media a little bit here tonight, but there is some action with that too, and actually some power behind social media. Review any establishment that marginalizes people or is notorious for being partial to certain clientele. So it's true that we can't always change the minds and the hearts of hateful people or those who spew hate. but we can certainly make it shameful and financially burdensome to speak or promote messages that are meant to harm and divide our world. I think so. Let's see. And I believe another thing about us. We are also multitaskers. So while we're doing this action, let's also make sure that we use any influence we have. If you are a doctor, if you are a teacher, if you sweep the streets, use any little semblance of influence that you have to help people. Whether it's to give them an opportunity, maybe a hand up, a job, a reference, but also to educate them and to heal and hurt the marginalized community members that are amongst us. This is where we begin, and this is where we will see progress. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Aldo Martinez. He's an immigration attorney from Martinez and Martinez Law.
Thank you. Very eloquent speakers. My prepared statements now look like the San Bernardino, California freeway system. My name is Aldo Martinez. I'm an attorney. My wife and I raised 4 children here, Somerset County, Hillsborough. We have 4 grandchildren. We have 5 grandpups. I came here to the United States at age 11, alone, from Cuba. I am an immigrant, and I am an American, and I am privileged to be here with you tonight. Dr. King fought for justice, equality, unity, and freedom. He told us how to fight. First, he told us to have hope. And I quote, he said, "We refused to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt." He added, when he told us how to fight for those values, by saying that we must conduct that fight on the high plane of dignity and discipline. He added, we must not allow our creative protests to degenerate into physical violence. Much has been said tonight about freedom, unity, and American. So I ask myself, I ask you to ask yourself, what does being an American mean to us, to you? Our country, I believe, is fighting for that definition today, as it has fought for that definition for a long time. So a small little test. Am I an American if I treat others different because the color of their skin, because of their religion and how they worship, because I believe that it is acceptable for some not to be treated justly, or because I do not wish to promote our general welfare, or because it is my belief that not everyone should pursue the same blessings of liberty that I pursue. If anyone answers yes to those questions, I challenge them to justify the following quote: "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America." I believe that that question must be answered, and then we can go on to talk about what does it mean to be an American. And I believe that Dr. King had an idea, because as he concluded in his speech, all God's children will be able to sing, "My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing." Thank you. Educate as many as you can as to what being an American means.
Thank you very much. I also noticed in that piece of history you shared from the Constitution that there weren't any asterisks saying, "but only for this group." Yes. For everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce Victoria Williams Domath from the Meta Theater Company.
Thank you. I'm really short too, okay, despite the big shoes. So when Dr. Gaffney first asked me to speak here tonight, my first thought was Facebook. You see, I had seen something posted on a friend's page that bothered me. It bothered me so much that 12 hours later, I was forced, like my hands were tied to the keyboard, forced to reply. What had bothered me so much was my friend had posted an innocent article about the latest tragedy going on in the world. And the comment reply was, "Nobody cares, Meg. Nobody cares." Think about that, because it certainly feels like that right now. We are faced with a mountain of injustice, as Dr. King called it 54 years ago today. A mountain. A mountain that constantly reminds us through social media, television, the very infrastructure of this country, that it is so very big and we are so very, very small. A mountain that reminds me that people like me, that people move to my town for the demographic. And I shouldn't worry because I wasn't like those blacks in Newark. So, feeling frustrated and angry, I took up my keyboard, weapon of arms for a keyboard warrior, and posted this quote by Roxane Gay. "There are injustices great and small, and even if we can only fight the small ones, at least we are fighting." Are we fighting? Are we fighting, or are we freezing because the mountain is so big it seems insurmountable that we are terrified to put out signs in our yard, or oppositely, running out to put out American flags in our yard to distance ourselves from those others, to transform our ethnicity? In June of this year, I got sick of being a keyboard warrior, and I found a real fight. I joined a social justice group, and here I stand today, a social justice activist. See, when Dr. King gave this speech, talking about this insurmountable task, this mountain of despair, he remained steadfast, reminding us, with this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. A stone. Side note, I had to Google hew. I didn't know what it meant. My favorite definition was to make shape smooth with cutting blows. Blows, plural. King understood that actions, many, many actions were required of all of us if we were to defeat the mountain that is injustice. And many, many blows, many small acts, small stones of hope, would bring it down. So when you were standing at the face of the mountain thinking, "Nobody cares, Sam," remember you are not alone, and look for a stone, because we are fighting.
I'm reminded of the quote, "You have touched a woman, you have struck a rock." Our next speaker is Gabriella Tovar, also from the Meta Theater Company.
Good evening. I would like to start with a poem by Langston Hughes titled "Still Here." I've been scarred and battered, my hopes the wind done scattered. Snow has frizzed me, sun has baked me. Looks like between them they done try to make me stop laughing, stop loving, stop living. But I don't care, I'm still here. 4 years ago, on a day like today, my soul was scarred. my boyfriend and I were looking to buy a house. We were already at the property when the realtor called telling us she would be late. We were waiting no more than 10 minutes when a police officer showed up. One of the neighbors called the cops on us. I remember feeling rage. I kept asking myself, would that neighbor have called the cops if we were white? Does the color of my skin restrict me to certain neighborhoods? Does the color of my skin determine my income? As you can probably guess, we did not put an offering on that house. I am not strong enough to be battered with this on a daily basis, but for some people of color, there is no alternative. It is our responsibility to denounce structural, institutional, and individual racism. Racism is prevalent and continues to exist and mutate through generations. Please do not freeze in silence, for silence is consent. Be an ally, listen to and amplify the voices of the people of color. Some of us are feeling more hatred ignited by racism now more than ever. I urge you to aggressively seek out more information in an effort to enhance your awareness and understand racism. Reevaluate your use of terms, phrases, or behaviors that may be perceived to others as degrading or hurtful. Take steps to implement discussions or workshops aimed at understanding and eliminating racism in your community. By doing so, you will reach moments in which you are grappling pre-existing notions and new perceptions. While this may seem a form of resistance to change, cognitive dissonance is a critical crossroad in the commitment to combat racism. The realization that I will be judged based on my skin color and not my capabilities saddens me. I feel distressed knowing that one day my children will be treated the same way. It angers me that I have been taught to judge others based on their character, but I am judged by my pigmentation. It discourages me knowing that I have to work twice as hard as my white counterparts to achieve the same level of success. It infuriates me knowing that the system didn't fail me, it just never included me. It shocks me that 54 years later, we are not close to achieving the dream. Despite it all, I still have hope. I'm still laughing, I'm still loving, I'm still living. I'm still here, and I'm tired of dreaming. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker is the Rabbi Dan Salzberg from Temple Shalom.
We haven't solved this yet? It's a long night. As a rabbi, all I can really do is teach from the Torah, a book that Reverend Dr. King was familiar with. All you need to know to understand this is that the master story of the Hebrew Bible is that the Israelites and Jews were enslaved in Egypt and God freed them. You might know the story, you might have seen the movie, the book is better. But this week, Jews around the world read the same piece of the Torah, the same piece of the Hebrew Bible each week. Each week we go in sequence, we read the same thing around the world as we work our way through. This week, we read the command, do not hate an Egyptian. This is God speaking to the same people who were enslaved by the Egyptians. People who were enslaved and their children are asked not to hate. They're not asked to love them. That might be a bridge too far. But they're asked not to hate. And if they are capable of not hating, then nothing less is asked of us. It's not about all being the same. That's the diversity that we heard about. I'm sure there are people here that I'm with who I passionately disagree with on issues that I think are very, very important, not on trivial matters. And we're asked not to hate, both at the same time. It's not a big deal for a rabbi to get up and to condemn neo-Nazis. It would be an odd rabbi. I think the same is true for most people here. It's not a big deal for a rabbi to get up and condemn the KKK. My guess is most of us don't have much problem doing that. Not hating means we seek it out in our own communities. We seek out the parts of ourselves that need to hear that message. And we find ways not to hate. This, just a couple chapters before in the Torah, we get the command, tzedek, tzedek, tirdof, justice, justice, you shall pursue. It is not a command that you should wait around and see if justice happens. In the Hebrew Bible, this isn't a 21st century liberal document. This is calling to us from thousands of years ago across the world, saying you must pursue justice. That is what it is asked of us. It was asked of us thousands of years ago, and it is asked of us now.
Thank you, Rabbi. Our next speaker is one of our co-organizers of tonight's rally, Dr. Karen Gaffney, the professor of English at Raritan Valley Community College.
Thank you so much. As a reminder, the brochure that you got coming in is a call to action. This event is a call to action. Thanks, Doug. And this brochure is filled with a lot of information about local, state, and national organizations that you can go to for resources about taking action, because it's not just about showing up at a rally, it's about taking action. As a white educator and an anti-racist activist, I try to work every day on leveraging my power to dismantle white supremacy. The burden cannot be on the marginalized to defend their humanity. Those with power need to step up and examine how fear has been used to divide and conquer us for centuries. We cannot stand idly by and let that continue any longer. It is only when the most marginalized are free that we are all free. We must recognize the interlocking systems that support white supremacy, especially those that perpetuate a negative stereotype of Muslims as terrorists, or black people as criminals, or indigenous people as savage, or Latinx people as illegal, or immigrants as dangerous. We can't resist only some of these negative stereotypes. We must resist them all, because they all work together to perpetuate a power structure that serves only a small elite. It is time we resist the ideology that some people are more human than others. It is time we recognize the full humanity of everyone, including people who are black, Latinx, Asian, Muslim, Jewish, immigrant, transgender, indigenous, incarcerated, and undocumented. Many white people in the U.S. today don't know that whiteness was invented. Let me say that again, invented by a tiny, wealthy elite to maintain their power and control.
That's right! That's right!
In colonial America, the elite had to teach European laborers to identify as white. It is not natural or biological. The elite invented whiteness to divide Europeans from Africans and to rationalize the stealing of indigenous lands and the creation of slavery based on race.
Absolutely!
Many white people don't want to learn this history because it can make white people feel guilty and uncomfortable. However, we didn't invent this system, we inherited it. So I believe that white people need to decide what to do with this inheritance. Do we ignore and deny? Or do we seek to learn the history that we are rarely taught? Do we learn how we have manipulated to support white supremacy? Do we learn how we can resist being divided and conquered so that we can finally build lasting unity? We can build this unity by learning the history that has been whitewashed. We can build this unity by supporting Black Lives Matter. We can build this unity by insisting that people of color, immigrants, Muslims, Jews, and transgender people are people. We can build this unity when we take action to support the words of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who wrote in jail, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." Thank you.
Fired up, ready to go. Our final speaker this evening is Dr. Ali Chowdhury, who is the president of the Islamic Society of Basking Ridge, the co-founder of the New Jersey Interfaith Coalition, the former mayor of Berners Township, and the creator of the pledge to stand up for the other.
Greeting of peace. We have heard and we know that hatred and bigotry cannot be wiped out unless each one of us makes a commitment to stand up and condemn bigotry and hatred wherever we see it. I came to the United States more than 50 years ago and have lived a little more than 40 years right here in Basking Ridge. And the story of this pledge tells me something that I want to share with you. The pledge that you have in the program wasn't something that I dreamed up one night. It actually happened at a meeting that I attended as a member of the Interfaith Advisory Council of the Homeland Security Department. March of 2015. At Drew University, as a part of the Interfaith Advisory Council meeting, we heard the intelligence briefing in which we learned of 3 Muslims having been killed in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. A synagogue had been desecrated, and other horrible things had happened. And at the end of their report, the director was going to go on to the next item on the agenda. But it bothered me, so I raised my hand and asked the group whether, as faith leaders, we had any obligation to do anything about what we had just heard. And in fact, ask ourselves whether the work we do as faith leaders is making any difference. And then I offered my own criterion of what I would consider to be an evidence that we have made a difference. And I must share with you, as I was standing on these steps, I remember that those words that I shared with this meeting on March 15th were actually said in a church about 3 blocks from here. In an interfaith group at Father Ron's church, where a young man from Bridgewater, 2 other adults, and myself was sitting and talking about this many years ago. And I said to them, how do we know that we are making a difference? And I said, I will know that we have made a difference when we see the day that when Muslims sitting at a family dinner table hear someone say something hateful about a member of another community, a Jew or a Hindu or a Christian, and that another Muslim at that table stands up and says, that's not right. And when Jews sitting among themselves hear someone denigrate a Muslim or someone else, and another Jew at that table stands up and says, That's not right. Same thing for Christians and others. So then I asked this group if they would be willing to take this pledge. And I would just add one other thing about this pledge. It is a little different from a pledge that we might ask a politician like Leonard Land or the mayor of this town to make, to do something for us. This is a very personal pledge, because the fact is, we observe and experience and suffer from bigotry and hatred in many places and in many forms. And unless each one of us can make a commitment right at that point to stand up and say that that's not right. So I'd like to invite you, if you feel that you would be willing to live up to the spirit of this pledge, to recite this pledge with me. It's in the program, but I'll make it very simple. While interacting, repeat after me, with members of my own faith, or ethnic, or gender community, or with others, if I hear hateful comments from anyone about members of any other community, I pledge to stand up for the other and speak up to challenge bigotry in any form. Thank you very much.
Dr. Chowdhury was our last speaker tonight, and I know Kristen's. Oh, no, it's on me. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. We literally got the permit, planned this, got the word out in a week and a half. A true story. We started as 6 individual women who felt a call to stand up against hate and to bring other people together to do it. And so the fact that you are all here tonight to stand up with us and take action after tonight warms our heart like you couldn't believe. Thank you to our sponsoring organizations, the Community for Unity, the Somerset County Cultural Diversity Coalition, the Central Jersey Community Coalition. Man, y'all gotta get together on these acronyms. And the hate has no home here. If you remember nothing else from tonight, from this wonderful group of diverse speakers that we had, remember that one person is enough to take action, that you can always make a difference, to always choose love, to always stand up for the other. And yes, I should have read on the thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.